The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parsha Shoftim Tov Shin Nun. It's well known the mashal which the Alter Rebbe brings in Likutei Torah about the month of Elul. Says the Alter Rebbe, Yuvan, it's understood al pi mashal melech, like the mashal, the parable of a king, shekoidem boyoy leir, before he comes to the city, yotzin anshe ha'ir likrosei, the people of the city go out towards the king, umekablin panov basada, and they receive the face of the king in the field. So the anshe ha'ir, the people of the city, go out to receive the king. Va'oz, and at that moment, Rashoim v'yacholim kol mi sharoitza, anybody who wants to can, has permission, lotzeis lahakbel panav, to go and receive the king's face. V'hu mekabel es kulam b'seiv panim yafes, and he receives everybody with a smiling countenance. Umare panim sheichakus lekulam, and he shows a smiling face to all. V'kacha inyan al derech mashal b'chodesh Elul, similarly in the month of Elul, yotzin lahakbel oir panav yisbarach basada, we go out to receive the face of Hashem in the field. Shehu inyan ha'oros yud gimel midos, because there is, during the month of Elul, a revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy. Sheyir panim bepanim k'meshikosav keil havaya yoir lanu. That is the mashal which is brought in Likutei Torah of the Alter Rebbe. Now we need to understand, l'chayra, the mashal of Melech Basada is actually the opposite of the avodah of ani l'doidi v'doidi li. Because there are two ways in avodah. One way is doidi li v'ani loi. The first, you start with an isarusa de la'ela, an arousal from above, which precipitates a arousal from below. In other words, the beginning is the isarusa de la'ela, and then there's the seder of ani l'doidi v'doidi li, which is the beginning and isarusa de latata, an arousal from below. Now, if we have a look at the mashal explains how doidi comes out of his place, comes to the field, and seemingly that's a perfect mashal for doidi li v'ani loi. In other words, that's a perfect mashal for an asarusa de la'ela, for an arousal from above. If that's the case, how is it a good mashal for ani l'doidi v'doidi li, which emphasizes the avodah from below? Furthermore, the whole concept of doidi is the idea of shaychus and kiruv, connection, proximity. Doidi means my doid. Doid is from the word yedidus, and ahava, it's friendship, love. And therefore, the hisgalus, the revelation of doidi li, is something which expresses the closeness and the proximity and the nearness of a yid, which is not such a tremendous chidush. However, when you say the word melech, melech implies roimamus v'hisnasus. The king is meshichmai olamayla, head and shoulders above the people, and certainly head and shoulders above the anshe hasada, the people of the field, which they are certainly on a lesser level than the people of the city, and certainly of the capital city, and certainly of the people in the palace. So there's a tremendous chidush, a novelty in the revelation of the king in the field, because it's min hakotze el hakotze. The king goes out from cheder heichal malchus, he goes out from the royal chamber, from his throne room, which of course is in the palace, which is in the capital city, the mokem elyon biyosa, the highest place. And where does the king go? To the field. And there, in the field, anybody who wants to can receive the king's face. So you can't get a greater isarusa de la'ela, arousal from above, than that the king goes out into the field. And if that's the case, How is that a mashal on the inyan of ani l'doidi v'doidi li, which is starting with ani to doidi, the asarusa dilatata, the arousal from below? So the simple answer is that the revelation of the king in the field is the idea of the revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas Harachim in the 13 attributes of mercy, which that is an asinas koyach. That is an empowerment for the avodah of ani l'doidi. In other words, in order that there should be an avodah milamata, in order that there should be an avodah from below, from the people in the field, there needs to be first an empowerment from above. So the mashal of ani l'doidi of Melech Basada means that the king comes out to the field in order to give the empowerment that there should be the ani l'doidi. However, from the words of the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah, who says, Yotzin Anshe Ha'ir, that the men of the city go out into the field, the implication is that this mashal explains not just an asinas koyach, that there is an empowerment for the people in the field, but it's also giving over the essence of the month of Elul, that the avodah of Chodesh Elul is in the field. And the going out of the king into the field is because the principal avodah of Elul is after in the field. Now, this actually brings a deeper question out. We know that the month of Elul is a Chodesh Harachamim. It's a month of mercy, in which we add in davening, in tefillah, and in learning, because Limud HaTorah learns by the Yud Gimel Midah Shahatorah and the Dreshas behind the 13 principles of exegesis, which correspond to the 13 Midas HaRachamim. As it says, Ani l'doidi v'doidi li, and the end of the pasuk is Haraya b'Shoshanim, which, as the Gemara explains, Shoshanim meaning roses, but it also means Shoshonim b'Torah, learning Torah, as we know that the 40 days between Rosh Chodesh Elul and Yom Kippur, these are the days of Rachamim, but also the days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Har Sinai in order to receive the second set of Luchos. So according to that, the avodah really of the month of Elul is in the inyan of Torah. So the question is, how is that shaykh davka in a sada, in a field? What's the relationship of those 40 days of Rachamim, when really they are days of Torah and Tefillah? How do they connect with the sada, with the field? So we'll understand this by first of all understanding what is the avodah of a person, and specifically in the field. A sada is a place which produces food. That's the avodah of Sidura de Pas. The Gemara says the first 11 of the 39 malachas are in the bread making process. That's the avodah of a person in the world. As it says, there are arboim malachos, chasar achas. There are 40 malachos, less than one. That lashon, arboim chasar achas, is actually difficult to understand, because the reason why we choose those malachos is because of the word malacha and melachta and melaches, which are in the Torah, which is actually mentioned 40 times. And if it's actually mentioned 40 times, how come there are only 39 prohibited malachas? And also the lashon is strange. Why do we say arboim chasar achas, 40 less one? Just say there are 39 malachas. The answer is on Shabbat. The answer is that there are 40 malachas. The 40th malacha says v'hamalacha hoisadayom. In other words, there are 39 prohibited malachas. However, there is one malacha which is permitted, and that's called malacha shamayim, the work of shamayim. So that's the diuk haloshen arboim choser achas. These 39 malachas are actually missing one malacha. In other words, the kavana and the tachlis of engaging in the 39 malachas, the uvdin dechayil, the weekday matters, is in order to draw into them and to reveal within them the melecha shamayim, the kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim. That everything that Hashem has created in His world is created for His glory. That is the one Melecha Shamayim that needs to be drawn within and permeates all the 39 malachas. And in fact, the reason why these malachas were prohibited, because they were malachas which were used in the Mishkan. So although they are uvdin dechayil, they're weekday matters, the fact is though that all those malachas were involved in building the Mishkan. So we see clearly that the concept of malacha, although it's engaging in a weekday matter, its ultimate purpose is to build the Mishkan. And this is emphasized in the avodah in the field, which the roiv avodah of a person is in the field. As it says in the Torah, Ki savayu el haaretz, sheish shanim tizra sadecha, for 6 years you should work the field. Ubashana hashviz Shabbos l'Hashem, you have a shmit in the 7th year. So the roiv hazman, the majority of the time, you're spending in the avodah of the field. And similarly it is in every single week. The roiv, the majority of a person's time, they spend in uvdin dechayil. On Shabbos it says, Kol malachtecha asuya. All your malacha is finished on Shabbos. And similarly in every single day. After davening and after learning, the Torah says, V'yosafta digonecha, you have to go out and gather in your grain. Haneg bohem minig derech eretz, you have to engage in the worldly order of making a living. Furthermore, the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph says, B'shor shemachnisim odom ledin, when a person goes up to heaven after they pass away from this world, they are given a questionnaire, and the first question which they are asked in the Beis Shamayla, in the heavenly court, is Nosata v'nosata be'emunah. Did you do your business dealings with faith? Only after that is the person asked, Kovata itim la Torah, have you fixed times for Torah learning? So from that we understand that the principal avodah is the avodah in the world. However, this is difficult to understand itself, because we know that Ata v'chartonu mikol ha'amim, Hashem chose Yidden from all the nations, v'roimamtonu, and Hashem has elevated the Yidden. If that's the case, surely the principal avodah of the Yidden should be in matters of kedusha, in Torah mitzvahs, in Mishkan, in Mikdash. So why is it that the majority time of a Yid's avodah is specifically in the world, like lahavdil, the nations of the world? And the answer is because the ultimate purpose of creation is to create a dira b'tachtonim, that the tachton she'en lamata mimenu, the lowest tachton, even in sada, in the field, there should be drawn a lukus, rather like the descent of the soul which comes from the highest place to the lowest place, in order to create a dira b'tachtonim. And so now we'll understand the marshal melech basada. The month of Elul is a month of a cheshbon. A soul accounts for the entire year, the past year, to correct and complete anything that was missing in the past year, and it's also a preparation for the coming year. And consequently, it contains within it all the different types of the avodah which are mentioned in the Rosh Tevas of Elul, Ani l'doidi v'doidi li, which is tefillah, Ina liyoda v'samti lach machim, Torah, Ish l'rayeu matonos l'avyonim, gemilas chasadim, es levavcha v'yes levav zarecha, tshuva, and Ashira Lashem Vayem Leima, which is Gula. Everything is included in the month of Elul. And consequently, we emphasize at the beginning that all of that avodah needs to be in the Sadeh, because the principal avodah is to draw all of that into Uvdin Dechol, into the weekday, into the mundane, into the Sadeh. So therefore, the mashal of HaMelech Basadeh is not just an empowerment, but it's to tell you that the entire content and the Sach HaKol, the summary of all our avodah, is to bring the Melech into the Sadeh, so that the Sadeh should become a dira for the Melech. Furthermore, the king in the palace actually represents Giluyim, revelations. You have the Levush Malchus, you have the king's garments, you have the king's crown. However, in the field, you have a revelation of Atzmus, of the very essence of the king. So therefore, the revelation of the king in the field is in fact for the whole purpose to show that in the field, there you have the revelation of the king himself, Adira loy yisbarach to atzmusi yisbarach dafke in the field. Al derech which it says the pasuk in Keheles, v'yisren eretz b'koil hi melech l'sada nevad, that through the people of the field, they actually provide the food for the king. In other words, the king, in this case, had a taiva. The taiva, the desire was to have a dira b'tachtoinim, and it's davka, the men of the field, that actually fulfill that by creating a dira le'isbarach in the lowest of all places. So we actually have in Melech Basada two extremes. On the one hand, you have the Sadeh and the advantage of the Sadeh, and the king becoming revealed to the people of the field, which is the lowest of all places. But at the same time, you have the revelation of the king himself, that the king is revealed in that field, B'chol atzmuso, with all his essence. And the advantage of Chodesh Elul over all the other months is because it emphasizes that the whole kavanah of the entire avodah of the field is that in the field should be revealed the king. So this reflects itself also in our avodah, because the avodah in the field is melachtecha, it's your work. But it's done l'tzoyrach hamelech, it's done for the king, l'shem shamayim. And even though it's done for the king, not necessarily the whole year round does it cause a revelation of the king himself. However, the revelation of the king himself actually comes through limud HaTorah, because it says, on the other hand, since the kavanah is that the king is in the field, what this shows is that the principal kavius itim has to be by people of the field. In other words, the people of the field who are not yoshvei oil, but they are people who work in the field, when they have a kavius itim la Torah, when they set aside time to learn, and the king is revealed in that field, that is the ultimate of the creation of the Dira B'Tachtonim. And that's why in the month of Elul we add in Limud HaTorah, because that is the way to reveal the Pnei HaMelech in the field. It's interesting that the principal revelation of the king in the field is actually achieved more in Limud HaTorah than it is in Tefillah, because Tefillah is the idea of Halah, the elevation from below. Hispashtus HaGashmias, which is leaving Gashmias. Torah is actually the other way around. It's Hamshachah Milamayla, is to bring from above, so that the Metzias of the world should conduct itself according to the Torah. And that's why you even have in Ani L'Doidi, which represents Tefillah, the last 4 yods of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li correspond to the 40 days which Moshe Rabbeinu went up on the mountain to bring down the Luchas Hashniyos. And the Iker Ahava of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li is represented, as it says in Shir Hashirim, Yishakenim Nishikas Piu, when Hashem kisses us through the Torah, as it says, Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li, Haraya B'Sheshanim, which comes out through those who learn Torah. And now we understand the connection of all of the above with Parshas Shoftim. Because Shoftim v'Shoitrim Titan Lecha B'chol Sha'arecha is principally in the Sanhedrin Hagdola, which is in Yerushalayim, the Iker Torah Shabal Peh, the Amud HaHorah, and the purpose of the Sanhedrin is that the dinim of the Torah should permeate Sha'arecha, your gates. Where do your gates lead to? The gates lead to the field. And through the field, the Hanhaga of the entire world will be Al Pi Torah. And that, of course, is principally in Eretz HaKodesh. However, even in Chutz La'aretz, if we stand strong in Torah, we can cause that the world itself should conduct itself according to Torah. As is well known, the story of the Tzemach Tzedek, that even when he was in Lubavitch, he made Sedarim in Petersburg. He organized things in the capital city of St. Petersburg. And with the koyach of the Torah, we can pasken that there should come already the Geula, as is emphasized in the Haftorah, Anoichi hu menachemchem, that Anoichi, the first Anoichi goes on Torah, the Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, and no nafshi kesavis Yehavis, I gave myself into the Torah. However, the second Anoichi refers to the very essence of Hashem, who will come and take every single Yid out of Golus. So to put it in the context of Elul, the Sodeh represents Golus, and the Gilui, the revelation of the Alufa Shaloilam, is the Melech in the Sodeh. In other words, we need to bring the Melech into the Sodeh. The Sodeh is Golus, and if we bring the Alufa Shaloilam into the Goyla, that results in Geula. This is also emphasized in Pirkei Avos, which in that year they learned Perek Aleph of Pirkei Avos on that Shabbos. Moshe Kibbel Torah Sinai, which is the idea of Limud HaTorah. V'al shloisha dvarim ha'olam omed al HaTorah v'al Avodah v'al Gemilas Chasodim, which, as we know, that corresponds to the three Avos. Avraham Avinu is Gemilas Chasodim, Hachnosas Orchim, the receiving of guests and acts of kindness. Yitzchak is an Oila Tamima, he was brought on the Mizbeach by the Akedah. That's the idea of Avodah, the idea of Tefillah. And Yaakov is the inyan of Torah. However, if we have a look in the Mishnah says, Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam omed, on three pillars does the world stand, on Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. That's actually the opposite order of the Avos. If we're going according to the order of the Avos, we should say Gemilas Chasodim, Tefillah, and Torah. But we don't. We say Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. However, according to the above, it's understood because principally the revelation of the king in the field is through Torah, and that has a pu'ula, that has the effect on the world, that the world is and becomes a place where the Melech comes revealed even in the Sodeh. HaMaisa hu'ika, the main thing is the Maisa. We should publicize all the Rosh Tevas of Elul and emphasize especially Limud HaTorah, which is the highest form of Teshuvah Ilah, and we should emphasize the fixation of study time for Torah, and through these hachlotas tovas will merit to see the Beis Din HaGadol, the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, and will merit to hear the Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitzei from Mashiach. Mashiach will stand on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash and will announce that he gives man gulaschem, and will be merit the negila v'nismachabach, the rejoicing in Hashem himself, until the very atzmos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be revealed in the coming of Mashiach now mamash.